This is going to be a show today.
Thank you. Got to get that for my mom to watch later. Welcome to the Electoral Area Service Committee meeting of Wednesday, June 4th, 2025. We have at the table today Director Segal, Wilson, Deck, and Nicholson. And online we have Director Morrison, Director Martman, and Director Acton. And tardy Director Abbott. Welcome, everybody. First, I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. I'd like to recognize that the CVRD we are on the unceded territories of the Quatsin, Malahat, Sabasit, Halibut, Penelakut, Stanamus, Liaxin, Pachiquin, Dididat, and Pachidat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. Ms. Boyd, on number one.
Thank you, Chair. Could we please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Moved by Director Wilson, second by Director Segal. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Moving to adoption of the minutes, we have a recommendation that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of May 21st, 2025 be adopted.
Moved, seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to number 3.
Thank you, Chair. There's no business arising from the minutes. We move to the public input period.
The public input period is to offer the public the opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any item on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that that are or have been subject to a public hearing. Input from the community is valued and appreciated. We request that input is presented in a friendly, respectful manner. Your cooperation in maintaining safe, respectful, orderly environment is greatly appreciated. Is there anybody from the gallery that would like to give input? Seeing nobody coming to the lectern. Well, moving on to item 5.
Thank you, Chair. We have no delegations today. We move to correspondence C1. It's a grant and aid request from Electoral Area F, South Cowich and Scotts Falls PMR Rescue Society, Missachi Lake Volunteer Fire Department.
Moved by Director Segal. Do we have what? Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Usually Electoral Area F.
He's online.
You might want to read it out.
Did you want to read that out, Director Morrison?
No, I'd just like to move it. I think it's been published and everybody's read it.
Has been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 7. Let's do these in a block. IN 1, 2, and 3. What? Nope. For information only. Moving right along. Oh, did you have, thank you, Director Morrison.
Yeah, I just thank you, Chair. Just like to have everyone note the IN2 has some pretty interesting reading from the Area F Advisory Planning Commission, and I'd just like everyone to take note of that and read it at your leisure if you haven't already. Thank you.
Duly noted. Electoral Area F is very important. Director Morrison, Director Martman.
Thank you. I don't know if it's appropriate to make a comment or thing, but I did read it with interest. And I did have a question maybe through the staff or maybe through to the director, is that I noticed that no staff were in attendance, and I just didn't know, I hadn't run across that is that an anomaly, or is that sort of, can we arrange that as a director, or I'll take that offline if it's not appropriate.
Yeah, I don't see staff in the room that would be appropriate to ask. Yeah, would you be comfortable asking that? No, but we'll save it to the end. Yeah, you looked at me, so
I see Ms. Chair
yeah,
there.
We'll save it to the end, Director Martman. Thank you. Yeah.
I see Ms. Chair stepped in.
Oh, online. Thank you. Ms. Charf, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so it is typical for bigger projects where there's extensive volumes of reading material and maps to go through for the APC to meet with staff at a preliminary meeting, and then to have a subsequent meeting where they've had a chance to adjust the material and formulate a recommendation back to the board. So that is not unusual. And if you recall, in this case, there was a joint meeting for all of the APCs that preceded the individual meetings where the topic was discussed, and that's why you didn't see staff present.
Thank you, Ms. Truff.
Chair. Thank you, staff.
Excellent. Director Morrison, would you like virtual high five, or did you want to take that down? Awesome. Moving on to item 8.
Thank you, Chair. We're moving to reports. For R1, report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 25801. This is 4110 Yellow Point Road, PID 002-832-593.
Thanks, Ms. Boyd. And I believe Ms. Arden is presenting. Thanks. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, I'm Annie Arden. I'm a Planner 1 with the Development Services Division. This is my first time presenting today, so hi, it's nice to meet you all. Okay, so today I am here to present DVP 25H01. This is an application to vary the Electoral Area H zoning bylaw to increase the size of a detached suite from 74 meters squared to 90 meters squared. The subject property is zoned R1, rural residential, which permits a single detached dwelling and a detached or attached suite. Detached suites are permitted a maximum floor area of 74 meters squared. The applicant is requesting to increase the permitted floor area to 90 meters squared. They have provided a letter of rationale in support of this application in which they outline their intent to construct a detached suite to enable aging in place. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. The recommendation is before you. Staff have recommended issuance of the variance as it appears minor in nature, and staff consider the proposed variance will not negatively impact neighboring properties nor detract from the rural character of the neighborhood. The requested variance is consistent with the zoning bylaw amendment presented by Community Planning and is consistent with other DVP applications approved by the board. Thank you, and I'm here to take questions. The applicant is not in attendance today.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, Annie Arden, that was a fantastic job. Well done. Welcome to the CVRD. Do we have any questions for staff? We'll just let you stand there for a little longer.
Great.
Seeing that there's no questions from the staff, I'd like to turn to the director of the area since we don't have the applicants here. Ben, Ms. Director Martman, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff. That was a wonderful report, and I would move your recommendation.
We have a seconder. Any comments? Discussion, I should say. Call to question. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Again,
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to R2, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have the report from the Development Services Division regarding application number RZ25B01 3402 Kingborn Drive, PID 023382007.
And I believe Ms. Dabina, you're already there. Excellent.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to introduce myself as a joke, but you've seen me before. So this application before you proposes to rezone the subject property to permit a 2-lot subdivision. The current parcel size of 2.05 hectares is consistent with the existing A2 secondary agricultural zoning, which permits a minimum parcel size of 2 hectares, whether a parcel is serviced by community water and sewer or serviced on site. The proposed subdivision would result in 2 approximate 1 hectare parcels. I think, yeah, there we go. That's great. Thanks. So the current official community plan, or OCP, supports subdivision of land with the best capacity for residential development or the least need for environmental protection, and supports larger lot sizes in rural areas outside of growth containment boundaries. Next slide, please. Staff are recommending the application be denied due to inconsistency with current OCP policies that do not support subdivision within rural areas and that direct residential development within growth containment boundaries, where, consistent with servicing capacity In addition, the application is not supportable from an environmental perspective, as it would increase density within the Coquesala River watershed, which is known to be under stress from increased demand resulting from intensified land use and development. And there's alternative recommendations provided in the staff report. Thank you. Applicants are here.
Applicants here, excellent. Well, first, before we go to the applicants, do we have any questions for staff? Anybody in the room? Online, Director Martman.
Thank you, and I read this one with interest. But I wasn't sure if the staff report outlined the consequences of denial in terms of what is permitted and what can the landowner, property owner do. So maybe you can clarify that.
Thank you, through the chair to Director Martman. So the current zoning allows one single detached dwelling and either a detached or attached suite. So they could presumably apply for to construct a detached suite.
So, do we have any other? Oh,
Is that it?
did you have a follow-up, Director Martman? No,
Okay.
follow-up. Director Abbott, go ahead. Oh, did I get you? Nope, hold on. I think this has changed since the last time I used it. Nope. I might need to call on our chair. It's right there.
Yeah, touch his microphone.
Oh, the mic.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you,
Not that
Chair.
mic.
Thank you, staff, for a worrisome report. We in Area D have almost hit a moratorium on further construction because of the Coquesala aquifer. And you know it's stressed, but have you had anything formal from Lands and Water, whether connecting more water into the Coquesala aquifer is going to be permitted?
Through the chair to Director Abbott, specifically in relation to this application?
Correct.
No, we have not referred out to provincial ministries, but that is an alternative option staff have provided in the staff report.
Okay. Thank you.
Follow-up? No. You good? Director Acton.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation, and I have a question.
Can we hold on that? Just, I think there are a few more questions. I'd like to let the applicants speak as well before we move it. I think that's, yes, we'll wait, yep. I have a question before we do that, but I'll come to you after, Director Acton. I'm assuming the recommendation stating it's in line with the OCP is in line with the current OCP and what's the OCP, I know we're going through changes, what the OCP will be or the local area plans in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to the chair. Yeah, the staff report delves into this a little bit. So under the current OCP, the designations allow for minimum parcel size of 1 or 2 hectares, and that sort of relies on the zoning then to decide on the specific number. So for this is currently 2 hectares for minimum parcel size in the zoning bylaw. In the MOCP, which is not yet adopted, this area has actually been identified within the large lot rural designation, which would be, they've actually specified a larger minimum lot size, so to 4 hectares. So this would already be undersized under the MOCP.
Thank you for
and
that.
outside of the growth containment boundary too.
Thank you for that clarification. I understand we have directors in the room, applicants in the room. Yeah, if you'd like to come up and, thank you. Oh, did you have a question for staff? Oh, I apologize. Can you, I hate to do that, to bring you up and put you back down. We have another question for staff. Sorry I missed you, Director Wilson.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's okay. Did you mention just now that there is an alternative to build a detached building on the thing? I don't see that in the report.
Yeah, it's under the zoning bylaw regulations in the staff report. It very briefly just explains that the zoning does allow a detached suite or attached suite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll leave it on. Yeah.
And I apologize for that. Come back up. Is it Sonia?
It is Sonia, yeah.
Welcome.
And I'll introduce my team here, our delegation here today. Myself, Sonia Nagel. Some of you may know me from the Duncan Cowichan Chamber of Commerce. My husband, Daryl Nagel. My son, Lucas Nagel, and his partner, Mariah Mason. I will come back to that secondary house at the end of this, because I did address it in my letter of rationale, but I will come back to that. So as described in the letter of rationale, Daryl and I own the 5-acre, and I'm in acres as opposed to hectares, sorry, on 3402 Kingburn Drive, Cobble Hill. Purchased in 1996, we moved in on January 2, 1997, amidst the snowstorm of the century. Lucas is our son who is wanting to build a home on this property, and the purpose of this rezoning application is to allow a family member to own a home and contribute to Cowichan's economy. We are so happy that he has chosen to build a future in Cowichan, unlike our other son who can't wait to get out of here. Before I go any further, I want to acknowledge Jamie, the planner at CVRD. Our communications with Jamie has been very, very positive, and she provided excellent feedback during her site visit to our property, noting that our 5-acre property is well suited for a subdivision, as it has a natural upper section and a lower section. The lower section, which gets no sun in the winter and has probably the worst driveway in the Cowichan, is where our family home currently exists. As the intent is to build a single home on the subdivided 2.5-acre property with its own well, septic, hydro, and driveway access, Jamie commented that it is a solid application and encouraged us to remain optimistic that it would be approved. So I'm just going to ask, who's familiar with the Kingburn Drive area in the Kingburn Valley? Yay, there you go. It's a funny little pocket with a Cobble Hill address. We really feel we're part of Cobble Hill. However, as a crow flies, we are on the back side of the quarry and fall into Sierra's area in Shawnigan Lake. And as a crow flies across the Coxsala River is Allison's jurisdiction. As indicated in our letter of rationale, most properties on Kingburn are 10 acres, 5 acres, or 2.5 acres. The latter are properties subdivided years ago when you could subdivide for family members. Unfortunately, this no longer exists, and I question why in this day and age when we want to encourage generational housing. Jamie has cited that our application does not support the goals of the OCP as we are outside the growth containment boundary. However, I do feel that we do align with the goals of the modernized OCP as indicated in the letter of rationale. Housing expansion while preserving rural character, support for local families and economy, neighborhood endorsement, and compatibility. And there were lots of letters in that application to support our rezoning and a subdivision from our neighbors. The environmental development of CVRD has indicated concerns of the Coxsala watershed. Number one, I had no idea that Coxsala watershed encompasses 302 square kilometers, so I presume this is a standard concern of all developments in Shawnigan, Mill Bay, Cobble Hill, Cowichan Bay, Glenora, and parts of Duncan. I can assure you that all residents of Kingburn Valley are concerned about our watershed, and you will find that we are respectful of water usage from our aquifer. I can also assure you that our son Lucas and Mariah share the same philosophy as us and will be respectful user of the water from the aquifers in our area. He works in the trades in an HVAC company and is far more in tune with modernized methods of protecting our environment for his generation and generations to come. Just to let you know, we have a well at 150 feet, pumping almost 10 gallons per minute. The adjacent upper level properties, adjacent to Lucas and Mariah's proposed property, are at 225 to 300 feet, accessing excellent quality water and pumping all over 10 gallons. We are confident similar depths and supply will be available on Lucas and Mariah's property on the upper level, and he is aware of the resources and the expenses to drill a well on this upper level property. He's also well aware of any mitigation required for runoff from his property into our property and other dwellings. In closing, I urge you to approve this rezoning. We have the support of our neighbors and the Kingburn residents. It supports housing in a rural environment while maintaining the integrity of the rural area. It supports a family member and a young person in their goal to have land title on a rural property in the Cowichan Valley. And I did forget to mention that there is a selfish reason for rezoning and subdividing for our son. It allows us to age in place, knowing that we have family support in an adjacent property. We know we have a long road ahead of us. Please know we're committed to the process of rezoning and ultimate subdivision of our 5.065 property for our son Lucas and Mariah and their next generation of Nagels. And I did want to just go back again to address that secondary option. We actually started this path looking at that option and discovered that we could do a 908 square feet property or an additional building. It still would be up in the upper level. It still needs its own well, its own services, its own septic, because there's no way you could tie into anything on our property in the lower level. And then the other thing that we discovered along this path is that Lucas would never have ownership of that dwelling. He could not use his $60,000 that he has put aside for his first owner grant. We would have to mortgage the house and the whole property for him. We discovered he couldn't even get insurance for that property. We would have to insure it. So it comes with all kinds of complications. I don't think that's where you want a young person to get started in the housing market. And so for that reason, we are not going to go down that path of a secondary dwelling. We really want him to own his own property adjacent to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Nagel. Maybe hold on a minute. Perhaps any of the directors, do they have any questions for the applicant? Okay, Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. You're mastering that well. Full disclosure, Sonia and I know each other. Sonia used to be my spouse's employer, boss. Sonia, you're familiar with the detached and attached, and you've just given us the rationale. A lot of us there are many people in the Cowichan Valley facing similar age-in-place scenarios, and I just wondered, should this not go the way you would like it to go, have you considered selling your home to your son and your son building a detached dwelling for yourself and Daryl? As you say, it still needs a well. It still needs a septic.
I'm gonna.
That's a bit personal.
Let's. I'm gonna. Okay. Point of order, maybe. I don't know, but let's not go down that path. Yeah. That's okay.
And you know what I'm going to say as well? The whole family thing of doing this. We have another son that what we discovered is it becomes complicated when you have another family member in that situation who is now not getting anything until we pass, and then it becomes a complicated will issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Abbott. Any other directors have questions about the property and the zoning for the applicant? Director Martman.
Thank you, and it's more to staff, I believe, in
So
this case.
let's just, we can bring staff back up. I just want to finish with the applicant. Yep. Thanks, Director Martman. Any other questions for the applicant? No, thank you. Yeah. Staff, maybe you want to come back up to Ms. Dabina. I see Director Atkin laughing at me. I think she likes my... No? Okay. Director Martman, did you have a question for Ms. Dabina?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the full package here in terms of the decision making and which way I will lean or follow. And the one piece I really don't know about is the Board of Variance. And does a decision here, following staff, apply to the Board of Variance at all?
Through the Chair to Director Martman, the Board of Variance cannot make decisions on density and use. So this is a density application. So no, cannot go to the Board of Variance.
I'm glad I can ask you as the expert. Thank you. Thank you for that. That was one piece of the puzzle I was trying to understand.
Director Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm struggling with this one as well because I understand the problems that not just this family faces, but every other family who have space where they need to make their child or their children a space to live and be able to age in place.
Director Wilson, did you have a question for staff?
I will get to that, I promise.
There'll be lots of time to debate it.
I'm sure there will. On the other options that you've got there, Jamie, is there anything that comes close to, because I've read the other options and I don't really see if there's anything there, but in your expert opinion, is there an option there which comes close to what they might be able to achieve within what we've got at the moment? Tough question, that one, isn't it?
Mr. Vito?
Through the chair to Director Wilson, do you mean the options, like the other recommendation options, or just the other? Okay. So, I mean, this is a preliminary report, and we often send preliminary or rezonings for referrals unless the OCP doesn't really support it, and that's what staff have determined in the staff report. But there is an option to refer to other agencies, and that would go to the Advisory Planning Commission and some of the ministries, and perhaps they could weigh in on this application.
Okay.
There's also an option to ask for more information.
Okay.
Did you have a follow-up question, Director Wilson?
No, I'm just cogitating again, thank you.
Okay. Director Nicholson, do you have a question for staff?
Yes, I do. So we know the Coke Isla is very challenged on the waterfront. So whenever you subdivide, you're, as opposed, they can already have 2 homes on this piece of property. And if you subdivide and then it would not be rezoning for the people, we're rezoning the land. So then that enables 2 more potential homes on the land. So I am wondering if there is a way other than a covenant to lock it into no further additional attached, detached, or otherwise dwellings on this property.
Question, Mr. Bira.
So through the chair to Director Nicholson, that's a great question. So yeah, if the rezoning proceeds, they would be permitted, like obviously 2 1-hectare lots with a single-family dwelling and detached or attached suite. However, in the drafting of the bylaw, we could remove detached suite, not attached, because under the provincial legislation, we have to allow for the attached suite, but we could remove the option for a detached, which would potentially limit like coverage and on the lot, but they'd still be permitted the one single detached and then an attached. Does that help answer, I think?
Director Nicholson, do you have a follow-up? No. Are there any other questions for staff before we? Sorry, any other? Yeah, no more questions for staff. Turn to the Director of the area, Director Acton.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move the staff recommendation and speak to it, please.
It's been seconded.
Thank you. So, yes, we zone the property. And this is an example of our zoning actually creating what the community wants and our vision for our new MOCP. So the unfortunate part is we know the applicant. We all have some kind of relationship with this applicant. So there's a side of us that's like, how can we fix this? But if that wasn't the case, this is a very plain, clear application that we have decided a long time ago, even and along with the residents of the Kingburn community, have decided that they don't want the area to be subdivided. We've also said we don't want it outside of the growth containment boundary. We've also, this would become a different issue. If we had sewer and water running down the street, then maybe it would be a different conversation. But right now, our zoning is actually creating the vision that we see for our communities and for the region. So I have to respect the planner's recommendation because she is going by the zoning that is in place and the vision that we have. So, yeah, so that's it. And unfortunately, I don't feel like with the strains of the Coke Isla And we've already had motions come to this table that we've said, like, no more development in the Coxsila watershed. And so if we need to talk about that some more and strengthen that some more, we should do that. But to me, it's a very clear, sorry, we're not doing it. And it's for the better of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Acton. Director Nicholson, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I concur with Director Acton. We really have a problem in the Coxsila with water scarcity. And even though you can put a well down 150 feet beside the Coxsila River and get lots of water, you're actually pulling water out of the river. And every summer we seem to shut the farmers off from their ability to irrigate because the river is not doing well, that the flows get so low. So it is a real problem, and it isn't going to be solved overnight. It may never be solved. We're working hard at it, but the timing for this request is particularly poor, I would say, from that perspective. And I think what's most important is that we send the right signal, that local government is doing their part to hold the line on development in the Coxsila watershed, because we're asking all the people that own property in the Coxsila to bear some of the burden of this problem, because we can't solve it unless everyone does their part. And so I really encourage people to vote with the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. Does anybody else have any comments? Ms. Boyd, could you read out the recommendation one more time before we call the question?
Thank you, Chair. That it be recommended to the board that application number RZ 25B01, I've scribbled over it. Sorry. Kingburn Drive, PID 023382007 be denied.
All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? The motion carries. And that will go to the board on June 11th. Yeah? June 11th. Thank you. Moving on, R3.
Thank you, Chair. It's a report and development services division regarding application number RZ21C02 Hutchinson Road.
Ms. Davina.
Hi, thank you. So this application is a rezoning application that was considered by the board on March 26th. The full resolution is provided in its entirety on page 2 of the staff report. This application is being brought back to committee in order to present the amended voluntary amenity contribution, which is more consistent with the reduced density the applicant is now proposing. Next slide will show the location of the proposed amenity. In addition, the committee is being asked to consider an additional condition regarding sewer servicing to be met prior to public hearing. I'll keep it brief. I know the agent is online as well. I think the next slide has the recommendation. Yeah.
Do we want to read that out now, or? Yeah, let's get a sense of this first before we go forward. Do you mind? Thanks, Ms. Boyd.
The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that an amended voluntary amenity contribution for application number RZ21C02 Hutchinson Road, PID 006906401, to complete construction and associated works of the undeveloped section of Verner Road right-of-way in accordance with CVRD Parks and Trails Division standards be accepted, and that in addition to the requirements in the March 26, 2025 CVRD Board Resolution 25-168 for application number RZ21C01 Hutchinson Road, PID 006906401, a sewer capacity assessment by a professional engineer confirming capacity and any required upgrades for the proposed development to be serviced by the Cobble Hill Village Sewer Service Area be accepted by the CVRD Utilities Division prior to public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Do we have any questions for staff before we turn to the agent? Anybody online? Oh, Director Morrison.
No, it's Cam.
No, hold on, Mr. Williams, hold on. We have some questions for staff first, and then we'll turn to you guys. Yeah. It's almost your turn. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. Question to staff. I I read this a couple of times and I see it's a reduction in density to 19. What was the original request as far as density goes, and do we have any rationale as to why the reduction?
Through the chair to Director Morrison. So the original proposal was 46 or 43 lots, if I recall. It sort of varied across a couple site plans. And the reason for reducing the proposal of, I don't know, 43 to 46 lots was far more than what the MOCP would support. And so the applicants have reduced it to be more in line with what the modernized OCP is suggesting would be appropriate for that lot and that area.
Do you have a follow-up, Director Morrison?
Well, I think my follow-up may be for the applicant, because that's a reduction by 50%, and I'd like to hear more, actually. So I'll wait until the applicant's up. Thank you.
I don't see any other any other questions. So I think we have both Mr. Williams and Mr. Clement. Is that right, or no?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Who wants to speak first?
I'll speak to that first. So the reduction of the lots was mostly to do with stormwater and highways. We weren't able to use the storm system via ditch that highways control, and CVRD has no storm. I think it's a problem that you're going to see following a lot of places in CVRD, because highways is really digging their feet in hard, not allowing any other storm water into the ditch other than road drainage. So due to that reason, we had to reduce the lots to 19 lots. And as Jamie also said, it does follow what the new OCP document is going to read. We had good support on the higher density from the local APC and staff, but unfortunately, again, due to highways and their criteria, it does not work.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. Mr. Williams, did you want to speak before we take questions? No, we good? Director Morrison, you have your hand up. Did you have a question for the applicant?
Yeah, if I could, because that sort of does require some clarification. So I'm really hoping that the decision making was more heavily based on what our friends at MOTT were suggesting, and did staff say that it wasn't that the density that was proposed initially in the 40 plus wasn't supported by the existing HOCP, but or MOCP, because the MOCP is not in place yet, and we need density wherever we can get it. So I know that there's engineering options to stormwater and the like that may be a little different than directing it to MOTT drains, but so
staff is I see staff standing up. Director Morrison, yeah.
Yeah. So can I get some explanation? Was it based on the current HOCP or the future MOCP that's not in place yet?
Through the chair to Director Morrison. So the current designation needs to be changed in order to have any sort of additional density. I think I don't have it in front of me. Is it rural residential? I can't remember. It's in the previous two staff reports what the designation is. So they do need to amend the designation. The current application is not in line with OCP policies for the most part. That information was provided in the previous staff reports. I know this application's been going on for quite some time. So I've included the board resolution from March that directed staff to draft bylaws according to the proposed site plan, which showed 19 lots. So this application or this report before you is to talk about the revision to the park amenity contribution and the sewer.
Thank you. Director Morrison, did you have a follow-up? We're kind of jumping around here a little bit, but did the applicants want to add anything to what Ms. Dabina.
Yeah, so we're basically following MOTT's guidelines to do a storm. We have looked at all other alternatives, Ian, to try to get more density, as we do need density and affordable housing. But unfortunately, we don't see any other possible solution to it. And as Jamie had talked about before, this does kind of follow what the new OCP would say down the road, even though it's not there yet. So we decided to go that route to do the 19 lots. We've also been working with Lisa and Vanessa in engineering to start the report for sewer. I'm waiting again for MOTT's approval for my 35 lots on Gallier Road in Cobble Hill, which we applied for construction approval about 9 months ago. They're really slow. They're really behind. In the report that McElhaney had done for that property a few years ago, once we added a few more things to the system.
Mr. Clement, I think I'll just ask you to stay on this property, if that's okay. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, sure. We did a sewer report 3 years ago.
Yep.
Which also said that it would leave room for more density in the Cobble Hill area. But we're still going to be doing a new report to confirm that the sewer will work, and if there is any upgrades needed.
Excellent, thank you. Were there any other questions for the applicant? No, thank you both for your time. I will turn to the director of the area, and hopefully they reveal themselves to me. Director Wilson, of course, director for Area C.
Got the red. Yeah, that's fine. I would like to move the staff recommendations, please.
It's been seconded. Are there any comments, discussion? It's been read out already in detail and published. Call to question. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. None opposed. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 4, R4.
R4, report from the Building Inspection and Bylaw Enforcement Division regarding bylaw compliance and enforcement policy.
Thank you very much. And we have, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Rob, Mr. Harris. It's real pressure-packed position up here, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Chair, and I do feel for you. So the purpose of this report is to bring forward for consideration amendments to the CBRD bylaw compliance and enforcement policy. The policy is intended to provide fair, reasonable, and transparent practice in bylaw enforcement. It is an effective tool to establish a framework for enforcement, and making it readily accessible to the public can help local government with limited resource manage public expectations while promoting transparency and accountability. The current enforcement policy was implemented in 2017 and may no longer reflect the current board's bylaw enforcement priorities. The proposed bylaw compliance and enforcement policy was drafted utilizing guidelines and considerations from the Office of the Ombudsperson's Bylaw Enforcement Best Practices Guides for Local Government. The bylaw compliance enforcement policy is more robust than the current policy and captures CBRD's enforcement priorities and what generally may be proactively enforced. The draft policy provides clarity in respect to prioritization of complaints, proactive enforcement, and discretion. And what I'll do is I'll just dive slightly deeper into it with a quick PowerPoint here that I have prepared. Yes, please. To the first slide. Yeah. So, as mentioned, what is an enforcement policy? It's the district's general approach to bylaw enforcement. It outlines in a public way goals of bylaw enforcement program and sets clear expectations and standards for enforcement. The policy captures enforcement priorities within the CBRD. It explains investigative procedures and what may be proactively enforced generally. The prioritization of complaints and considerations that go into bylaw enforcement are the nature of the complaint, the impact of the violation on the community, the impact of the violation on the complainant, public health and safety, and anything that may result in adverse environmental impacts. And that's new to the policy. If the public has not filed a complaint, investigations may be commenced under the following circumstances: observations by staff members or board members, referral from another agency, ID and a contravention, advertising unlawful uses, which is new to the policy, and contraventions to the permitting processes such as building, soil, and development permit areas, which is also new to the policy. I'll talk briefly about bylaw enforcement officer discretion and the proactive enforcement that is available. So the officers may seek out violations for environmental degradation. So that is new. That was never within the policy before. It is something the officers have practiced quite consistently when they happen to be conducting their duties. If they do see essentially mass destruction of sensitive ecosystem trees, work in a riparian area, they will initiate the action and the investigation without complaint. There is a general provision in this policy, as there is currently in the 2017, that provides direction for the officers to initiate investigations for any potential violation. So that is in our existing policy. It carries forward to this policy, and it just provides that ability, if need be, no matter what it is, burning fire or some other sort of consideration, that they can initiate investigations for anything at any time. So there are discretionary considerations, which are they're new and they're a little more robust than what was found in our current policy. So it's clearly outlined in the draft policy, and some of those considerations are consideration of a person's unique circumstances, considerations, factors of person's abilities to comply, hardships, their willingness to cooperate or not to cooperate. The investigations are proportionate to the nature of the violation, and there's flexibility, unique circumstances, consideration for extended timelines, alternative solutions when warranted by individual circumstances. And a lot of this is really the conduct being carried over from the other policy. This is, although it's laid out in this policy now very clearly, it was always something that the officers practiced. So brief summary regarding the new policy or the draft policy. There are enhanced principles within the policy guiding procedural fairness and enforcement actions. It aims to be transparent. It aims to provide some communication and proportionality within the principles. There's a couple definitions we never had before that are specific to frivolous and vexatious complaints that are explained in an understanding way, because at times that is an aspect of enforcement. There's enhanced officer discretion, like I mentioned, consideration of a person's unique circumstances, the hardships they must face, and as always, outcomes are free from bias and discrimination. That's okay. The new policy, or the draft policy, prioritizes investigations. The other policy did somewhat, but What it clearly states in this policy is that health and safety would be a priority. Possible adverse environmental impacts would be a second priority, and then at this time, general land use and other bylaws follow. The policy was a little in depth on the conduct of a bylaw enforcement officer and the conduct that's expected of those officers, and that their actions are appropriate and their outcomes and their decisions are appropriate as well, with language in there on how to challenge a decision by law enforcement. The policy goes into expanded enforcement measures that weren't captured in our original policy. So as enforcement progresses, you typically have verbal warnings, warning notices. This policy also goes on to talk about other measures that are available, stop work orders, compliance orders, notice on title, and legal action, etc. And one thing that this draft policy captures that was not in the other one was the roles of the elected officials, and that is in there because that is a recommendation from the Office of the Ombudsperson. And I hope that the committee had a chance to refer to that section, because it really, in my opinion, it's well put, and it recognizes the pressures that the directors come under from their constituents and the challenges you each face in the role that you have with the CBRD. And it does allude to the fact that it is important for the board to support the bylaw enforcement team and encourage their constituents to contact CBRD bylaw enforcement directly rather than through the directors. So thank you, and I'm here for questions.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Harris. We have a few questions. Got a bit of a speakers list. We got Director Nicholson, Director Morris, and then Director Deck. Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Harris. That was a great draft bylaw, I thought. I have two things that I would like to ask you questions about, which I need to find. First of all, I think there should be greater clarity, perhaps, or greater vagueness around the comment that you need to deter irreversible environmental damage. I do not know how you would possibly be able to decide that, particularly with a changing environment as it is. So what are we trying to get at here?
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, that's an excellent question. I think we need to dive into that a little more, but really it's something that's significantly egregious that I think anybody would look at it and consider it to be potentially a disaster that ultimately, I guess, through remediation, you can restore to a certain degree. But that is an excellent point, and it's maybe something we need to define better. And that is part of the purpose of this report today is for consideration to amendments. So we've always made it clear that I hope that this is, it's the committee's policy, ultimately the board's policy, and it's how the board sees fit for enforcement and any clarifications, regarding it. So certainly we're here for input, we're here for recommendations, and that's a good question about irreversible damage. I could probably have a follow-up conversation with our environmental planner as to what may be considered environmental or irreversible for greater clarity to be included.
Yeah, you probably want to just focus on the significant and get rid of irreversible and maybe put in some examples.
Follow up?
My second question is about, one of the big issues for the community is they don't like to complain about their neighbors. And I understand that because it can be very difficult. So I would like clarity. My question, first of all, is, are you able to complain, and then if it actually goes to litigation and your name's going to become public, can you drop the complaint and walk away from it? Are people able to do that?
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, kind of yes and no. People can make a complaint. If we feel it may move towards litigation, or if there's a hesitance to report that complaint, they are advised that if the complaint moves towards litigation, there's a risk, a high risk that their identity will be exposed, and they may have to testify potentially, or the whatnot. So if people are not comfortable with that risk when they report something, there is an avenue where it can be investigated, but ultimately, if it's not a violation that the officer can observe, maybe it's something only the neighbor has observed, something that's happened within the 6 months, it will be left at a warning. So it would never reach that level.
So I guess what I'd like is to make sure that you have that conversation with the complainant, because I think sometimes people don't really understand that. And I really appreciate the fact that you've clarified the director's role and that we are able to complain and maybe even complain for someone if need be. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, through the chair to the director, within the role of the elected officials, it does encourage the directors to encourage their constituents to contact the CBRD by law enforcement directly. It's always best to hear from firsthand information rather than a third party and an interpretation. It's best if we are connected with that person. But I have checked other policies. It's not consistent, that language within other policies that board members can make complaints, but it is in other policies. It's always been in our policy, but there may be some suggestions regarding how a board member makes a complaint.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I'll come back to you, Director Nicholson. Okay, I'll allow it quickly. Yep. You got to come back on.
I just, for the information of newer directors, this wasn't always the way. When I first started, board members couldn't get involved at all. So, and it was a really difficult, if you complained, it was basically, if you're going to complain, you'll have to testify. And so I really appreciate that we're dealing with it in a much more nuanced way.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. We've got a growing list, so I'll just kindly request we keep it to a question and a follow-up, and I'll come back around. Director Morrison.
I'll try, Mr. Chair. I think Director Nicholson's second question hit on something that was incredibly important. I'm going to give this a 99 out of 100 as far as policy goes. But that's going to reemphasize my point and the second point that she just made. If it's not used, it's useless. So we've got a situation, I can tell you anecdotally, that when people talk to me about potential complaints, their biggest fear is that when the bylaw enforcement staff come out to investigate a report, that they are going to tell the respondent who made the complaint. I know that isn't the case. I know that it's only very rare circumstances, and usually it's the respondent that is guessing who has lodged the complaint. So what I'm suggesting is that I believe that while the policy is excellent as written, I think we have to build in somewhere, whether it's in the policy or whether it's in communication, that people how they can complain anonymously, at what point it may become, or where their identity may be revealed, and those nuanced options that Director Nicholson spoke about. If people have the fear that the moment that they've made a complaint, that somehow it's going to be written down somewhere and it's going to be on a clipboard when a staff member goes to do the investigation, We can't have that. We have to have people understand the complaint process, how and when there is that small possibility of their names being revealed. And to me, my understanding, it's really just about at the end when we tried all of the other avenues that we have, the discretion, the bylaw offense notice, all of those things will happen in advance of litigation. So I'd like us to develop a means by which, and whether it's in the policy or whether it's through our communications, people can have that understanding and that certainty that their name will not be revealed until very late in the process. And I don't know what staff would have to say about how we might be able to approach that.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Mr. Hurst, did you have a comment on that?
Through the chair to Director Morrison, excellent point, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. People need to understand the process and what the risks are. I can assure you that the officers have all been through FIPA training. We are extremely confidential with complainant information. We won't even mention genders. We'll try and avoid that type of language. And unfortunately, people do come to their own conclusions. There can be previous discussions between, a respondent and a complainant regarding the matter, or geographically it only makes sense that it had to be that person. But at times, they're off base. But excellent point. And to get that message out there, maybe it would be, there is some language in the draft policy, but maybe it'd be best sort of front and center on the bylaw enforcement website with the CBRD, where it's very prominent, so people understand that prior to consideration of complaining.
Do you have a follow-up? No. Excellent. Thank you, Director Morrison. I have Director Deck.
I don't touch. Oh, rats. Oh, good. Two questions. One was a comment that was early on in the PowerPoint, and it said advertising unlawful uses. I don't know what that means.
So that's something we've dabbled with over time. So generally what that is we have had realtors reach out to us to inquire about specific properties, and at that point it comes to our attention that the property is advertising a suite, an illegal suite, with no permits or anything. So quite often we will reach out to realtors and homeowners, and we will say, you're advertising a suite, it's not permitted, or you don't have the paperwork, and there's a liability with that, and we request that they remove any language that talks about a suite within there. Additionally, we have come across certain situations under investigations where we stumble across and add that the property is being advertised as a short-term rental. Mm-hmm. And we don't necessarily we will also bring it to their attention that is not permitted. And one of the first steps of compliance is to remove the ad and not be advertising that. So that's generally the situation we get into there.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Yeah, follow-up.
Thanks. That was, I needed to hear that, actually. Thank you so much. Is there a place in the draft where say a widespread concern or local government or provincial government sort of is almost requiring you to focus on a certain issue? So will a certain issue rise to the top of a priority? I guess I'm really thinking about short-term rentals as an enforcement matter.
Yeah, as the draft, or through the chair to the director, as the draft stands, sorry, what was that question? One more time.
Just will a single issue?
So So as the draft stands, there are general enforcement priorities, health and safety and the environment and other considerations. There is the option for operational policies that we've talked about specifically in the past, particularly short-term rental proactive enforcement. Any sort of specific in the moment proactive endorsement for enforcement would best be suited in an operational policy. So I believe there is one moving forward to the board in respect to proactive short-term rental enforcement that was discussed at the last EAC with Mr. McDonald over there. But anything that the board would like to capture at the moment and provide some focus and potentially retract at some point is best lived within an operational policy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're on the home stretch. A couple more questions. Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair. You're doing wonderful.
I'll take it.
Thanks, Mr. Harris. I really appreciate the work. It's been a while since the last one. So, when I read through, the one thing that struck me is the difficulty I think I would have putting it through the lens of the public. And I looked at other regional districts, and I think some have something they call bylaw enforcement guide for the public. And I was looking under the report that talked about communications considerations. And your report basically it says update the bylaw enforcement webpage to link to the new bylaw enforcement and compliance policy. What's your thoughts about having an addition to that, or saying we will develop a bylaw enforcement guide for the public?
Through the chair to Director Martman, I think that's an excellent suggestion. This is all about being transparent to the public and having that information out there and available. So that probably would be best suited within our webpage, and I can work with communications to make that happen.
Follow up.
Yeah, I think because I think it also, from a number of the other directors, you can put in some flow charts and put in some things about, in this flow chart, at this point you will be asked to reveal yourself or potentially reveal yourself or never reveal yourself. So it can be really simplified and user friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martman. Possibly to finish our questions, Director Segal.
Thank you very much. I also really am impressed by this bylaw, particularly the guiding principles that wasn't in the previous bylaw. I love all the warm and fuzzy language. It's not warm and fuzzy, but it's compassionate and I think portrays the real work that you are doing out in the field, which I really appreciate. So my question is back to directors and how we're involved in bylaw, which really is here in this decision-making, setting up this policy. I notice it mentions that infractions can be observed by a board member earlier on in the policy, and then later has the role of elected officials. But I'm just wondering, if I'm out there in the community, I observe something, who am I reporting that to? How does that work? And should that be language that we should put in here?
Mr. Harris.
Through the chair to Director Segal. Excellent point. We kind of just went with what we currently have, which is very simple. An observation by a member of the board, but you brought up an excellent point, and I think it needs to be looked at as to collectively how the board feels they should report a complaint, and whether that's through the same channels as the public does, with no preferential treatment, or does the board feel that they should have a more streamlined avenue? I mean, that ultimately is up to the board. I think it's best practices to be as fair and open as possible, and I think Director Segal has made a really good suggestion potentially that, I'm not sure if you're trying to say that.
As a follow-up, I would
follow-up,
say, it should be the same as the public. We should not have any more access to bylaw officers than the general public, just to make sure that it's perceived as fair. So, of course, I emailed you ahead of time. I did draft some language, but do you need like an official, motion, or do you just take this as, you'll make some edits and come back?
Yeah, I think at this point, really, we are looking for some feedback and some input. So I am making notes here, and I'm happy to implement your suggestion as to how the board reports complaints, and bring forward a revised draft for the committee's consideration at that point. I mean, this is not something that I was expecting would be fully endorsed today without suggestions and other amendments. It's a bit of a working document till you are satisfied how you want the bylaw services carried out and the procedures within the CBRD, because this is a board policy. It's I've said before, the officers follow the policy, and it's how they'll roll out their enforcement, and ultimately it's how the board wants enforcement conducted and carried out in the CBRD. So it is your decision. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have another question, Director Morrison.
I think Director Segal brings up a great point, and I think part of what the concern in this isn't the initial reporting. It's how we as directors conduct ourselves after the fact, and that if I've witnessed an infraction, and I feel fully capable of providing that as an initial report, but it's at that point where we must back off, hands off, and allow that process and the investigative work of our staff to continue, and where we can't be asking for updates outside of regular reporting at meetings and the likes, because ultimately, as we could have decision making to do at a later date, and we must be in a position of being unbiased, unless a person would have to absent themselves from a discussion and a decision. So I think that people, I think electoral area directors specifically, people expect that if there is an egregious complaint and that there was, they would expect that we would have the ability to report it, but we must at that same time be able to say to our residents that a report can be made, but that's where our role ends until ultimately some decision making which may be made later on. So important discussion to have, and I'm comfortable with language. I think the public expect us to be able to make a report other than just by regular email means or by phoning, but it has to stop at the report. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you. Director Morrison, did you want to comment on that, Mr. Harris? I don't know if that...
Through the chair, I have no comment to Director Morrison. It's great points.
I have just one question. Just curious how we stack up with other jurisdictions. I haven't done a deep dive in other bylaws in other communities, but it feels like we might be leading the way somewhat. Can you maybe just speak to how we stack up against other jurisdictions?
To the chair, great question. I feel we're doing really good, and I feel actually we are leading the way. And there was a lot of consideration. I did a lot of research in other regional districts throughout BC and some cities and municipalities. If you ever have a chance to look at various enforcement policies, some are really dismal with very little information. This policy was actually partly drafted through a report that I read regarding Islands Trust, where in 2023, Islands Trust requested that the Office of the Ombudsperson assist them with creating a new policy for Islands Trust, which faces very similar issues as does the CBRD in respect to the environment and whatnot. So I drew a lot of information from that and a lot of recommendations from the ombudsperson and the ombudsperson's guide. And it's, you know, it is 9 pages. You know, longer is not necessarily better, but it's comprehensive and it really shows the process of enforcement. So I think it's one of the better policies out there. It's certainly updated to a 2025 standard. And, you know, I hope it's somewhat maybe of a model for other local governments.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, Director Morrissey, you took your hand down, that's great. Ms. Boyd, could you read out the recommendation for our, well, I suppose, Director Deck. One more question. Hold on.
So,
Thanks.
I'm wondering about information that complainants might need to, in order to feel comfortable putting forward a complaint to you. What will they be asked to do? Collect information or gather evidence, or, you know, at what point does that cross the line between, you know, making a complaint and doing the work?
Through the chair to Director Deck, excellent question. And, you know, when somebody reaches out to bylaw enforcement with a concern or potentially a complaint, we attempt to extract as much information as we can from them through their observations and any supporting evidence they may have. Because the next step will be for an officer to attend the property to speak to the person with the allegations of potentially of a violation. So we certainly don't expect, you know, we realize that we're dealing with the public and they will provide so much information, but it has to be sufficient enough to warrant an investigation, to go onto somebody's property and not accuse them, but advise them that we are in receipt of information where it appears there's a violation. So a lot of the times, you know, enforcement can be taken based on somebody's information they've provided us with the willingness to testify if need be, if we were unable to observe it, or if the officer observes it themselves. So once they're on site and they can verify a potential violation, then they will gather the evidence they need. But initially, sometimes we need evidence and information to even initiate the investigation, so we're not you know, viewed as harassing people on rumors or this or that. So we try and extract what we can to substantiate a complaint and take it from there. But sometimes that information will vary due to the nature of the complaint.
Final follow-up? Yep.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. And then quite often infractions will happen on the weekend or late at night, and then the evidence is gone. And so how does that get addressed?
So that typically, that is when we will really rely on complainant observations and information. And that is when we make it clear that we need a statement signed and dated. And if we are to proceed with enforcement action based on this complainant's information, they're going to need to stand behind what they're telling us and potentially testify to the truthfulness of this information to a judge, because we have an extremely low tolerance for embellishment and frivolous information that just throws it off the rails.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. A very thoughtful discussion. I think it turned to Ms. Boyd for an amended recommendation, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. After hearing all the changes and such, that the draft bylaw compliance and enforcement policy be referred back to staff to update with the suggested changes and bring back to a future EASC meeting for consideration.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Oh, we should have a discussion. Any discussion, comment? Very well done. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Bring us home. R5, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. R5, report from the Facilities and Transit Division regarding Cowichan Valley Transit advocacy.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Did you have that?
So I can briefly introduce the item. It's a for information staff report. So in the past few weeks, we've been discussing how to advocate for transit services in the Cowichan Valley at both these discussions happening at the Electoral Area Services Committee on May the 7th, as well as the Committee of the Whole on May the 14th. The report before you today provides a summary of key agencies involved in the transit service and their respective roles as it relates to potential advocacy. The advocacy topics presented in the report center around transit service expansion, infrastructure, provincial fare programs, as well as service delivery. With regards to the transit service expansion piece, the agencies directly involved in funding the service are the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, who set the funding level across the province, and then there's BC Transit, who establishes how the funding is allocated. I will say there is a lot of interest in transit expansion in communities all across the province, and it appears that BC Transit is challenged in keeping up with demand with the funding that they're receiving from the province. Even communities that have received transit service expansion appear not to always be receiving the full amount that they're requesting. It appears there's slightly more demand for expansion than there is matching provincial funding. Some key items that are driving up demand for service expansion are, for example, a backlog of unmet expansion from the pandemic, population growth in general, strong ridership growth in some communities, which may lead to passenger pass-ups and operational challenges. And as well as in communities like ours and others in the province, there's interest in expanding transit to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce transit, traffic congestion, provide transportation for seniors and youth, improve affordability for transportation, and expand active transportation. So it may be that further transit advocacy around funding levels, for example, could be explored in more depth at a later Committee of the Whole meeting. As I understand, that's when the UBCM draft resolutions are being considered. Without our conventional transit service expansion, we are very limited in our ability to improve transportation options in the community. We have looked at reports from BC Transit and considered ways to optimize the service based on our existing service hours, but without new expansion hours, we can't really make those improvements that we're hoping to do. Just in closing, a draft resolution is included in the report, and it's proposing to request a meeting with BC Transit and to convey the need for transit service expansion in the region, as well as reevaluate the transit scoring matrix, particularly as its emphasis on ridership does not take into account the strong need for transportation in rural areas with limited alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we move on, I saw your question there, Director Morrison. There was about that was meant for the chair, that question?
Well, if we could discuss it after this item, that I could share what my concerns were.
Excellent. Okay. Any questions for staff on this item for information? Excellent. I'll allow. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Ms. Rondeau. I appreciated this report because I think it hits on the key items and our limited options. And my big concern is with what's essentially a freeze on new expansion hours for conventional service and the limitation of new hours coming to an area with low ridership, we are going to ultimately have to start cannibalizing some of our low ridership runs to enhance service. And the identified need of the new hospital run is one of those. So I'm fully supportive of wanting to engage in a meeting with the minister and exploring another way to score more rural spread out areas with lower ridership, because it's those areas. The Cowichan Lake area has been a region of lower income populations for decades and are most in need of transit service. Yet the future looks bleak when it comes to possibility of new hours. So I'm very supportive of the direction that we're going. Is there? I'm just looking on where in the report has the recommendation, because it wasn't a recommendation, was it?
There's
Looking
Page 4.
at it's a for information, but
Page 4.
okay,
Yeah, would you like it read out? Let's read it out.
please.
Thank you, Chair. That a letter be sent to BC Transit with a copy to the Minister of Transportation and Transit. First bullet, requesting a meeting with senior representatives and the CEO of BC Transit. Second bullet, conveying the need for transit expansion funding to improve conventional transit services and grow ridership in the Cowichan Valley. And third bullet, that consideration should be given to reevaluating BC Transit's transit improvement process and expansion evaluation process in light of this need.
Thank you,
I'd be more than willing to make that recommendation to the board.
Did you have a follow-up, Director Morrison?
No,
Good.
I make that recommendation.
Can we? It's been seconded. Any discussion? Yeah. Well, Director Nicholson, did you have a comment about the resolution or the recommendation, or did you have a different comment about the item?
This is a control thing.
You win.
I just wanted to say I really appreciated the report, and I definitely support the recommendation, the motion.
Did you have a follow-up? Thank you, Director Nicholson. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I see Jim Wakeham there as well, and I've heard that he's going to be leaving us soon. Jim, you coming into the office anytime?
Mr. Chair, through to Mr. Wilson, probably not for about 6 weeks.
Okay.
I'm off on surgery tomorrow, and then I'm going to offer medical leave.
Well, I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Director Morrison, did you have another question? Excellent. So it's been moved, seconded. No more discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Excellent. Any other discussion? Moving on to number 9. Oh, yes, sorry.
Could we do
Thank
clarification on that item?
Yeah.
So I didn't hear a whole bunch of changes, Mr. Chair. I thought we were going to look at maybe a frequently asked questions or a guide to bylaw enforcement. And were we not in a position where we could move this forward to the board and adopt the policy, or was there a whole bunch of changes that needed to be made? Because I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so there, I think good question. It may be difficult to see just being remote, but Mr. Harris was taking notes as the different directors were asking questions, and I think there's some nuance there that maybe missed by not being in the room. But and specifically, I think your point about identifying yourself, and then Director Segal about directors and what they do. So just reworking that policy before it moves forward. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Excellent. That concludes unfinished business. No, it starts it. Moving on to number 9.
No unfinished business, no new business, and I'm not seeing anyone in the gallery that wishes to ask a question.
Nobody.
Motion to adjourn?
Moved, seconded. All in favor? Any opposed?